Hey class, so this is another tutorial going over the workflow from Rhino to Illustrator. We'll go over some more commands and tips and tricks for how to export and hopefully generate some cool content. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to turn off all our curves. So remember in Rhino, when you make 2D, you are basically making a two-dimensional flattened image of all the edges of a poly surface. So that in a sense translates from poly surface edge to flattened curve. And remember in Rhino, curves mean lines. So the way that you draw lines in AutoCAD, it is the same thing as saying drawing curves in AutoCAD, in Rhino. Sorry, God, I'm confusing myself too. So to turn off the curves, all we have to do is type in cell CRV, which stands for select curve, and that'll select all the curves. You'll see all the curves that are existing are highlighted in yellow now. So since I kind of have the framework, basic meat and potatoes of the Barcelona Pavilion all drawn out, I don't really need to save it. If I really need to extract some wireframe, I can always use the extract wireframe command to sort of redraw these existing curves. But in this case, I really have no use for these, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete them. So that's it. Alright, so now that these guys are deleted, we can get a nice clean make 2D. If we had done a make 2D with those curves turned on, they would have showed up. So remember I had like a curve that was kind of going across the stair beforehand, that would have shown up, and that is not cool. So now everything's kind of cleaned up, and we can proceed. So before we begin, it's probably best that we have some saved views. Remember, if we typed in the command named view, that's going to bring up this dialog here, which allows us to save views. So I already went ahead and saved 3. I have this kind of, typical sort of dramatic exterior, slightly bird's eye view. I have this isometric view, which is kind of cool if I want to make some diagrams, or if I want like a more, orthographic, more conceptual version of my Barcelona Pavilion. And I also have this direct 1-point perspective. So I turned on my camera and I lined up the points to this center line here. So now as you can see, I have like a perfect 1-point perspective. So to begin, I'm going to export this image right here. I can kind of do some pretty creative things with it in terms of exporting to Illustrator. And remember, if we lose our name view, like I am doing right here, all we have to do is just double click on the name view, and it takes us directly back to the view. So before we do the make 2D, let's make sure that our tolerances are set correctly. So type in options, go to units, and let's bump up our tolerance to make sure we have like 3 or 4 zeros, maybe 4 just to be safe. That's going to give us a more precise make 2D. And it's going to make sure that all the lines and edges are cleaned up and touching, and it'll just make for a much cleaner image that we don't have to edit. So now that we have our view kind of set, we can just highlight everything and type in the command make 2D. So in this case, I want to make sure that current view is selected, and I want to keep everything all on the same layer. So we're gonna not check maintain source layer, and we're going to not check show hidden lines. We're gonna do hidden lines in a second. But you know what? I actually forgot something very critical in this setup. So I'm gonna hit cancel and tell you what I did wrong. So I need to make myself a little reference line out here. So the reference line is just something for you guys to line up to, because you're going to be doing all these make 2Ds, and you're not going to have something to kind of work against that is constant. Basically, we're making like a control that is repeated in every make 2D, and we're going to snap all the other layers to this line that's floating out here. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. So I don't really see my line, so I'm just gonna drag it over here. Maybe scale it so it's not so huge. Something like that. Okay, so now I select everything, including my little reference line, and I type make 2D. So again, current view, don't show hidden lines, don't maintain the source layers, click OK. Takes a little while, and then in your top view, you'll see the make 2D. Everything goes straight to the origin. So if you wonder if your model is kind of way out here in space, just know that your make 2D went all the way to the origin, basically where the X and the Y axis, the 0X and the 0Y meet. So I'm pretty happy with my make 2D. I'm just gonna take it all and just kind of throw it somewhere out here. Now I'm going to go out of my top view and back into perspective. And I'm going to double click on my view just to make sure that I have the same view on. Alright, so now I am going to export kind of the same thing, but with the hidden lines all exported. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select all, and I'm going to type make 2D. And now I want to select show hidden lines. Click OK. And now we should have a make 2D that has the hidden lines in white. Something like that. I'll just pick it up and throw it somewhere close to the other one that I made. Alright, last one. This one's really important. So I'm going to go back to my main view. And now I want to generate an outline around this little pavilion. And the outline is going to be kind of like a little, profile line, in your line weights. You typically, when you're working in with a three-dimensional object, you want some sort of line that denotes the outer boundary of the actual object itself. So there's a cool command that's called gosh, let's see if I can remember this. Oh, duh. Okay. It's just called mesh outline. And so watch what happens when I type mesh outline. So I run the command, and then it's going to ask me to select some surfaces. So in this case, I want the whole pavilion. We don't have to worry about the reference line just yet. We just kind of want this this piece right here. And watch what happens. Okay, so now it's kind of hard to see, but there's an outline that's going all the way around my little pavilion. So this is going to help us when we export to Illustrator, and we can generate a nice clean line going all the way around the building. We could also use the curve boolean command, but in this case the mesh outline command is just so much easier, so I'm going to stick to it. And the thing about the mesh outline is that it actually draws the the curve out in space. So you'll see once I move the pavilion around, you'll see that there's this like floating outline here in space that only works if I am exactly in that right position at that right time. It's kind of like those, those art pieces that you see where they're this like, this like illusion piece of art that can only be seen in one point in the room. So this is kind of working with the same kind of principle, the same logic. And remember, since I have my save view, I can just double click on the save view and it goes straight back to that one view where it actually works. So now I can hold down shift and select my reference line. Remember, if I was to just hit escape out of this and I lost my my selection here, I could just type in SDL prev, which stands for select previous, and it just goes back to the most previous selection that you had. So I have my outline, I have my reference line. Now I just want to type make 2D. We don't need to worry about hidden lines, and just click OK. Awesome. So now we have basically the 3 layers of our view. And now you'll see where the reference line comes in handy. It exported the first 2 make 2Ds just fine, but the third one was a little bit too small, but we'll fix that later. So the first thing that we want to do, let's get all this on one layer. If we go to our layers panel, you'll see that under make 2D it generated a new layer, but in Illustrator it's going to show the layer that it's actually on. So you'll see how it made 2 sub layers in the make 2D. Illustrator is going to show that sub layer pyramid, so I don't really want that. So I just want to take I'm just gonna make things easier for myself and just make a new layer, and I'm just gonna call it lines. Or actually, I'm gonna call it O1 lines. And now I'm gonna put everything on that layer that I have selected. So remember, it's just the sort of regular lines, not the hidden lines. So to put everything on a layer, we just right click on the layer while everything is selected, and we go to change object layer. Now everything is changed to that layer. We can even change the color to something so that you can clearly see your changes. So if we wanted to change this to magenta, it'll change the lines too. Now let's do the same thing with our hidden lines. Let's make a new layer and call it O2 hidden. And let's move everything on that layer. So right click the layer, change object layer, and let's just change the color to turquoise. So now since these are kind of the same size, let's just go ahead and move them on top of each other. So we have our little handy reference line, and we can just put that right on top. And they're the exact same size conveniently, so we don't have to worry about scaling anything. So now you'll see we start to see a little like kind of X-ray view of our Barcelona pavilion. So it gives us kind of a sense of what's going on inside. Now I just want to bring in that outline that I did. So all we have to do here, let's do the same thing. Make a new layer, O3, outline. And let's change our selection to that layer. So now let's scale this up to the right scale. So let's just go from point to point. I just selected the endpoint of the reference line, and now I just want to scale it up so that this point meets that point. So here I want to type in the command scale, and I just have to select the origin point, and then the secondary point, and then the destination point. So it's 3 points total. And that's it. So now it's hard to see because I have the other line, the other layers on top. But if I was to move this layer on top of our O1 lines layer, it's still a little hard to see, right? I'll probably change the color. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I know that it's there because see, when I click on that selection, it brings up the selection menu. So now let's go ahead and we can delete our reference line, and let's just move this whole thing back to the origin. So remember, when we export to Illustrator, it's working against the origin. So if your content is, or your artwork is too far out, you're going to get some errors in the Illustrator telling you that it's not able to view the artwork because it goes beyond the boundary. So we want to make sure that everything goes straight back to the origin. Okay, so before that we actually export to Illustrator, let's go ahead and make our paper. Here, remember I said that it's best to do as much as you can in Rhino before exporting to Illustrator. That way it makes your Illustrator workflow super easy. So let's just type in the rectangle command. Let's start at the origin, and then we can just type in 17 and then the little inches symbol, the quotation mark, enter, and then 11 inches, enter. So now we have a little piece of paper that is 11 by 17. So now, as you can see, our Make 2D work is way too big for our little piece of paper. So let's just go ahead and scale all this down to the right appropriate size. Remember, since we're in perspective, we don't have like a proper scale, like 1 inch equals a quarter of feet, because that just doesn't make any real sense in perspective view. So all I did was I used the scale command, and now I just have to get it somewhere inside the paper. So that looks kind of pretty good. I can make some adjustments somewhere like that. I can always make adjustments in Illustrator as well. But that looks pretty good. I think I'm just going to go ahead and export to Illustrator. So I select everything and I type in export. So under our Save As Type submenu, we just click on Adobe Illustrator, and let's just type in, View 01. In this case, we want to preserve our model scale. Since I'm going 1 inch equals 1 inch here, God, this is going to be confusing, isn't it? Oh, God. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get this ready for exporting. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with my view. I'm gonna just go ahead and export it. So I just have to select everything and type in export. In our save as file type, let's select Adobe Illustrator, and I'm gonna call this View 01. So I could change the units and preserve model scale, but I'm just going to, for the sake of kind of showing you guys another way of exporting, I'm going to use snapshot of current view. Basically, it's going to show everything that is contained within my little viewport, and then we're just going to scale it up in Illustrator. So I'm happy with that, so let's just go ahead and click OK. So now it should have saved. I had it going to my desktop, so here it is in my desktop. And as you can see in my command view, it says file successfully written to wherever you saved it as. Make sure it says this. Sometimes it'll give you an error if there's something wrong with your export. So I'm going to click on View 01 and go ahead and get this started. Alright, so as you can see, I already have an 11 by 17 inch paper here. I'm just going to now scale everything up to the right size. Remember, if you don't have 11 by 17, to change the actual canvas size, go to Document Setup. Up here in the kind of top middle portion of your kind of main menu button tabs, and then you just have to go to Edit Artboards. This is where you can type in 17 inches by 11 inches. So let's just hit escape, 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 escape. And then, sorry, yeah. If you, once you have your desired, file size, like if you wanted it to be 11 by 11, you just have to hit escape once you're all done. So in this case, I'm pretty happy with 17 inches. So I'll go back and change it to 17. Hit escape, and we're done. Alright, so I'm going to scale this image up. So I just have to select everything, and I'm going to move it down here to the bottom left corner. And you'll see that it's showing that I'm intersecting the furthermost edge with the bottommost edge. So that means that I'm right at that bottom corner. And then I can just scale the whole thing up. Like so. Remember to hold shift when you're scaling up. That way you maintain the same scale. Alright, so now we have everything pretty much set to go. Let's go ahead, before I begin, let's select everything and turn the stroke color to black. So remember, the first little color submenu on the left is your fill, and the second is your stroke. Your stroke refers to your actual lines and edges in Illustrator. So you have to just hold down shift, and then you get the color submenu. So you just hold down shift and you'll get the color submenu. So let's just make everything black just to make things easy. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and change the stroke to 0.25. That should be your smallest available default number, and that'll make the stroke weight kind of nice and light. Alright, so we have all our artwork here, nice, looking pretty good. So to begin, I'm going to turn off my hidden lines. So I have my O2 hidden layer up here in the layers menu. If you don't see your layers menu, you just go to window and then go to layers. So I'm going to turn off the hidden line submenu by clicking on the little eye. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and also turn off the outline layer. So now I'm just left with my line work layer. And I don't have anything on this layer, so I'll just go ahead and delete it. Alright, so by default, anything that we do, since the lines layer is the only one selected, or the only one turned on, I should say, it'll be the default layer, the current layer. So let's go ahead and select everything, and we're going to type in the letter K. The K stands for the Live Paint tool. So now I want to go ahead and start playing around with the colors a bit. So in this case, let's go ahead and flip around our swap and fill buttons here. Basically, this just shows us what is going to be, basically what is the active thing that is going on here. It's kind of like a larger view of the buttons up here, except I kind of like working back and forth between these buttons and these buttons down here. And in this case, I want to just go ahead and switch them because I don't want a stroke color. I just want a fill color. And since this is, oh, hello. And so since I know that this fill color is already turned off and that's already a color, I'm just going to go ahead and swap them out. Alright, so that didn't do anything to my artwork. It just is editing my settings for the Live Paint tool. So let's go ahead and pick a color. In this case, I want something maybe kind of, bright, like maybe like some sort of orange. I'm basically just going to make like a little pop art kind of thing. And I'm going to just kind of make up some rules here. So in this case, I want only the exterior walls on the left side. Basically, anything that is facing on anything facing towards the left side of my page, I want that to be this orange color. Basically, I'll include everything like walls and roof, not the windows. So once we have the light paint tool and we have our color set, we can just go ahead and start clicking inside. And it just changes the color of these walls. The live paint tool only works for closed curves. So it won't work for something that is open, because then it'll give you an error by default. Let's go ahead and get our mullions too. Let's just spice things up here. I have some back mullions too. I also have this wall here. Alright, so now to change color, I can just hold down shift on the little color button up here, make sure that we're still in the fill button, and let's get like a kind of a tomatoey red, like that. And now I'm gonna do apply kind of a similar rule, but now everything facing the right side of the paper. So I kind of forgot to get this one orange too. So I'm just gonna go ahead and color it red, and I'm gonna change it later on. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Just have a few more to color. Almost done. Can also get this interior portion. Oh, and I forgot the roof. Oops, accidentally clicked that one. We can just go back to that later. Alright, so now, oh, I forgot this little wall too for the plinth. I'll just color that too in red. Now I just want something like really bright. Maybe like a bright, like kind of magenta-y. And let's go ahead and just get some of the tops of these. Maybe not the plinth. I'll just completely disregard the plinth. Oops. As you can see, there's something open in this curve up here. So that one's not going to work. Maybe the tops of these stairs. I don't want everything with color. I want to leave something, some things white, so that I have some room to play with the negative space. Okay. That looks wacky, but I'll just go with it. Alright, so now that I have everything that I want colored in, I can just type in the letter V. It stands for the selection. And I can just, as you can see, if I click on anything that we just selected as a live paint object, it all groups it together. So to get this isolated by itself, we had to do two things. We had to first, as you can see, when we click on it, we'll see something that says expand appear. We had to click on expand, and now it just groups everything together. So now that it's kind of exploded, it's still kind of grouped in Illustrator. So to ungroup it, we just have to do Control Shift G. And we just had to hit that like several, like maybe 3 or 4 times. And now everything should be by itself. Let's go ahead and change the color of these guys. So we can just select both of them. and then type in the letter I, which stands for the eyedropper, we can just select any one of these existing walls that we want. All right, so that's kind of cool. And you'll see what happens when we turn off the lines. It's kind of a nice little image that we get. Now that we have this, I want to put all the colors on their own layer. So to do this, I can just, oh, you know what? I forgot this little mullion that I made a little mistake on. I can just go ahead and delete that. So if I want to put all the colors on the layers, I can select on a color and I can just go to select same fill color. But as you can see, it's actually going to work for the oranges. It's not going to select the reds and the pinks. So to get those colors selected as well, since we don't have a stroke color on here, we can kind of trick Illustrator to select all the other colors by saying to select same stroke color, because by default all my colors had no strokes. So I'm kind of tricking Illustrator and selecting only my stroke colors. And I'm going to just go ahead and put that on another layer. So I'm just going to create a new layer. It's the fourth button from the left in the layers tab. And then once everything is selected, I just take the little color and move it onto the appropriate layer. So in this case, it's my layer 4. And now we can turn off our lines if we want and get this like nice, cool little pop art graphic of our Barcelona pavilion. So now that we have everything moved up into our new layer 4, by everything I mean just the colors, let's just go ahead and call that 04 colors. And I can just move that to the top. It doesn't really matter where it is. And let's go ahead and turn it off. Alright, so now we're back just to 2D lines. So let's go ahead and let's turn on the outline. And now to select all the objects in the outline layer, we just have to hit the little circle on the far right of our layers tab, and it selects all the objects that are within that layer. And let's go ahead and change that line weight to 1 point. So we have like a nice heavy outline going all the way around. And now let's also turn on our hidden lines. And let's select only the hidden lines. Let's actually also move hidden lines up to the very bottom. And let's change the stroke weight to 0.1. And let's change the opacity to like 80%. Now we could probably go a little bit further. Let's change the opacity to 50%. Yeah. Okay, so now we have, and we can kind of probably bump up our regular lines up to, actually no, those are fine. Let's actually just bump the hidden lines down just 1 notch more. Let's go to like 30%. Yeah, that looks a little bit nicer. So now we have this kind of dynamic graphic where we have the main outline going all the way around. We have our regular lines, and we have our our hidden lines kind of showing us what's beyond in the view. So now let's go ahead and change our document to be an 8.5 by 11. Okay, so now let's scale everything. So we want to make sure all of our layers are turned on. And let's get everything to fit on this 8.5 by 11 sheet. And basically what I want from you guys is to give me your line work version and your colored version, one on top of the other. So let's say I want to put the colored version at the bottom. I can just hold down shift and keep selecting all the layers where the lines are, and then I can just move all those lines directly above to where I have something kind of like this. There we go. We have our two uh, different ways of illustrating the Barcelona Pavilion in Illustrator. We have one that is purely done with planes and colors, and we have another one that is done totally in lines and line weight. And of course, you can keep adjusting the line weights if like one point is too heavy for you. Maybe since we scaled everything down, it didn't scale the line weights, so we can adjust appropriately. So now you can go ahead and write your captions here. You know, perspective 01, perspective 02, or you can import to InDesign. But since you're already in Illustrator, you might as well just do it here. And then in Illustrator, it's very easy to save it to PDF. So let's go ahead and save our Illustrator file. All we have to do is we just go to Save As, and in the Save As Type menu, just click on PDF. And it's as simple as that. You just have to click Save PDF. And there it is. It just generates a working PDF for you guys. So the reason, or the great thing about Illustrator is that it's all vector based. So you get these like nice, clean lines and clean vector graphics that can be scaled up to any size. And you don't have to worry about like pixelation or anything. If I was to zoom into this, the line work would be very fine and very crisp. See, and that's the best thing that you can ask for, especially for printing, just because it looks so much sharper and so much nicer. Okay, so that's the lesson. Hope you guys enjoyed it.